It is common today to hear people complain about their jobs. I don't want to be here, they say, or I hate this place. But is there really such a thing as a bad job? Or is the dissatisfaction more a reflection of the individual's mindset, expectations, and approach to life? This commentary will argue that there are no inherently bad jobs. Rather, the dissatisfaction people feel stems from false expectations, unfulfilled hopes, and an inability to recognize opportunities for growth. Additionally, a lack of commitment to seeking and achieving better circumstances often means that individuals are more content with their situation than they might admit, or they simply need to engage in some self-improvement to find fulfillment. When people describe a job as bad, they usually refer to aspects like the pay not being enough, difficult working conditions, or a lack of respect from superiors. However, these are all external factors that, while challenging, do not necessarily make a job inherently bad. What makes a job bad is often the individual's perception of these conditions and their response to them. For the most part, when asked at face value, people will state that their job is not too bad, or that they can do it easily. After all, everyone wants to maintain at least the illusion of competence or the idea that they can handle it. But in order for handling it to seem impressive, it had better be quite a challenge. Therefore, people will also often complain about the job, how the company is going downhill, and that there is so much mismanagement. But really, one can't expect others to be any better at their jobs than oneself is. So if you're slacking or not fully exerting yourself, which nobody fully exerts themselves 24/7, but if you're not, then you shouldn't expect anyone else to either. And the incentive to bash others or portray oneself as more valuable than the average employee exists as long as the incentive to avoid getting fired exists. So there is a certain point in the characteristics of a workplace culture in which such toxicity can run rampant. And it's difficult to judge just how hard someone else is working, because first of all, there are inefficient ways to do things. So it can look like someone is toiling away working hard, but they just might be wasting precious physical and mental resources being only marginally productive. Second of all, a few good decisions that may not seem physically taxing but require good executive decision-making and perspective could actually solve a lot of problems that may have caused backlogs of tough labor tasks had those decisions not been made. And third, the common phrase of walking a mile in someone else's shoes before judging them seems to ring true in some sense, but in another sense, it doesn't even go far enough. After all, a mile is only a 15 to 20-minute walk. Somebody could be spending that time in the break room or watching YouTube videos. So shadowing somebody to fulfill their tasks for a period of 15 to 20 minutes does not really entail gaining much perspective on their jobs overall. Maybe their tasks take a couple of months to understand the gist, cadence, and expectations therein. Perhaps instead of walking a mile in someone else's shoes, we should walk 1,000 miles before judging. And although proverbs aren't necessarily meant to be taken literally, it can still be understood that 15 minutes is a sprint in workplace terms. One can rush through things in 15 minutes and pretend that that level of productivity is easy to maintain, but it never is. Try redlining for 12 straight hours, or 8 hours a day for 5 straight days, and then keeping it up for another 3 more weeks after that. Nobody can do that, but sometimes we like to pretend and imagine the ideal scenario where we have endless endurance on all cylinders, mental, physical, social, and emotional. But sometimes we don't have as much in the tank as we might feel we have after a short period of time, like 15 or 20 minutes. It is just a slight preview. Finally, we often falsely assume or feel entitled to the idea that we will be able to fulfill the minimum requirements of the job description, not have to deal with any other inconvenience, hassle, or expectation, and for everything else to do with situational aspects of the job to go entirely smoothly. However, that is never the case. You are not going to get along with everyone equally well, and when working for a corporation with many employees, you will have to rise and fall with the team, as you may make mistakes, but other mistakes will also be made by others, which you can latch onto as much as you want, but there are professional and unprofessional ways to handle that. You can try to shame other people as much as possible to draw attention away from your own shortcomings. However, That negative energy projected outward causes more drama, toxicity, and degrades the workplace culture to a point until you realize that what goes around comes around. So the ability to gracefully point people in what you believe to be the right direction without attempting to insult them is something important in any workplace. And no matter how terrible you think other employees are, it is still a skill to learn. If you don't like your workplace, it may also partly be that you do not get to live freely and totally contribute your own creative input. Well, if you signed up for it, you signed up for it, and things are typically never quite as good as advertised. Obsessing over pay also rings relatively hollow, because typically entry-level workers receive the lowest pay and have to work exceptionally harder in order to get a few more pennies on the dollar and slowly move up. One's workload, responsibilities, and stress level can seem to double or even triple, and yet the pay might go up by 5 or 10%. It is a deal which is inherently not worth it at some point, but spending time in the company may progressively pressure you into gaining those responsibilities, even if only to help out the team, in case someone else typically tasked with that is unavailable. And just because someone else seems to luck out or have the right connection to get a better promotion faster than that, with much less increase in skill, responsibility, or productivity, and yet a very large increase in pay, that jealousy should not translate into a mindset of entitlement. You should already know the system is corrupt enough that you should never have fully bought into it in the first place. Expecting otherwise is to play into the very greed you may perceive as running rampant in higher ranks. But if you believe someone else is greedy and you also want to live like them or have their so-called easy position, then wouldn't that make you also greedy and jealous at the same time? You might as well not even stoop to such levels. Hierarchies are all in your head. Entry-level jobs are intermediate steps to actual freedom and should be treated as such. It is unproductive to focus on claiming the higher ranks of a corporation are greedy, because most others would do the same in their situation, including yourself. Many people would accept corruption as long as it benefits them, which leads to the incentivized expansion of all corruption in a way throughout all levels of a company, where people are vying to contribute their input and embellish the importance of it in order to be given a larger share of the pie at a disproportionate rate to the company's growth. The main way to win the game is to not even play the game, or at least to eventually phase out one's dependence on other people's creative input, and to go into one's own business ventures and creative inputs, where you produce for others more so than you consume for yourself. And if you can do that, then you can reach the independence most people wish for, and that is hard work. It is exertion, it is uncertain, and it is the unknown for many people. But because of that, it is not only worth striving for, but necessary to strive for. So strive for greater success than the jobs you dislike so much, because otherwise, if you just complain, you're just implicitly giving up and believing your ideal situation is already at hand. You exist where you decide you belong to exist, and it is your reality and your rules. There are no bad jobs, because if work needs to be done, then doing it is good. And even if the connection between your job task and the survival of you and your civilization is difficult to see, at least it is a way to improve at something and demonstrate mastery across, hopefully, multiple disciplines, assuming you endorse your own versatility enough to branch out or have the experience of other industries. As well, you are ultimately your own boss in life, as nobody can force you to do anything except by actual physical force, which rarely applies in modern workplaces. For the most part, things are easier than ever. In fact, it is easy to keep a job without even being competent, as documentation and HR cases often have to be made, perhaps corrective action, 3-strike rules, and evidence gathered until finally someone is let go. And while that is not always the case, it is certainly the case more often than in previous eras. So the truth of the matter is that we have things pretty good, almost too good, leading us to typically complain about the inconveniences of the job enough to feel justified in undertaking a difficult task by making it through the day. And that fills one with a sense of accomplishment. But was it really that hard? I think not. Yes, there is difficult labor that can occur at a job, but even manual labor jobs are done under much safer, better conditions than before, with personal protective equipment like harnesses, blast shields, hearing protection, and automation in transport like cranes, pumps, forklifts, and conveyor belts. Some warehouses play like jungle gyms. They are really not so bad, and the drama or politics, quote unquote, of the workplace might dominate one's negative thoughts. But one can also just grin and bear it, ignoring the silly workplace drama, because it's beneath you. And it might as well be below anyone else too. But we tend to pick our conflicts in proportion to how formidable we see ourselves. So why not rise above and see yourself as transcending such drama? You are greater even than you think you are. Thank you for listening.